I would like to start with the short introduction of what's hybrid war, because you have for sure heard it a lot of many times, and usually when speaking of Ukraine and Russian disinformation on Ukraine, this term hybrid war, it's very common and very often used. Hybrid war is the in hybrid war, two types of means are used, and that's why it's hybrid, because it's used both kinetic means and non-kinetic means. And by kinetic means, we understand special operation forces, then conventional military forces or regular army, and also creating and supporting of self-proclaimed state, how it happened in the and it's happening now in so-called Donetsk and Lugansk People Republic. And by non-kinetic means, we mean economic war, political and diplomatic offensive, cyber attacks, lawfare, historical warfare, and what I'm mostly researching is propaganda and disinformation. So that's only part, a small part of the whole concept of hybrid war, because it consists of many other aspects. And all of these non-kinetic means you for sure have also seen not only in Ukraine or in Belarus or in all other countries, because to some extent they are used in many other situations and many other countries. But combining all these means and using them as a system makes this a hybrid war, which is waged against Ukraine. And by saying that all other countries have also witnessed that, I just today have looked through the social media and saw this picture. So that's the Russian state TV show on the main channel, Россия-1, and you have seen here they are discussing the most unfriendly countries to Russia, so who they think are most unfriendly countries. And here you see United States, Baltic countries, Georgia, of course, Ukraine, Poland, Czech Republic, and Great Britain. And I think that the list is much longer, but they cannot put everything on one screen. So that's because of the limited size of the screen. But here you can see that all of these propaganda and disinformation and all types of influence are not, so they are not concentrated on Ukraine only. It's just because Ukraine is now in this position when everything, so in the position of hybrid war from the side of Russia. But all of these countries are also under potential threat, and nobody in Europe can feel safe when the aggressor is now so very active. So, and why is Russia doing this? So what is the goal of this hybrid war? The main goal of this is defeating Ukrainian resistance and bringing it back to the Russian sphere of influence. So in other words, Russia wants to win the war without conventional military methods because it's much cheaper. So it's much cheaper to use information than to use military and armed forces. And that's why it's used here in our situation. And Russia doesn't want such any countries like Ukraine and Belarus to be independent and to have the possibility for development out of the Russian sphere of influence, because they always show this as a threat to Russian security, but everybody knows that there is no threat because the aggressor is the threat to the security of other countries. So here I really like the concept of Ben Nimo. He has this concept of 4 Ds of disinformation, and he developed it while he has been working in NATO. And in 2014, when the Crimea, when the illegal occupation of Crimea has happened, Ben Nimo developed this concept, and I will shortly describe 4 of its components. So dismiss is the first and most common technique, and so it's like somebody says, don't listen to them, and because they are not reliable, you cannot trust them. It's a situation when you try to silence somebody by insulting them and by sowing distrust in the sort. And when you not succeed in this, then Russia goes to distortion, to distort. Distort is quite easy concept. So if if Russia sees that some fact doesn't suit their narrative, their story, then they make up their own facts and try to retell this narrative. For example, in Crimea, at first Russia did not admit that there were any Russian soldiers in Crimea, but after that they started to say that, okay, there were soldiers, but they were legally stationed there because there were military bases, Russian military bases in Crimea, and they were legally stationed. And after that, as you know, Putin himself admitted that this was one of the best military operations, and people who were military men who were involved in it got medals from Putin for, it says, за возвращение Крыма, for bringing Crimea back into Russia. So, and the fourth one is dismay, and dismay means to try and to scare people off. So the technique this technique is usually used when there is a policy debate. It's what's going on now, for example, when Russia concentrates its military troops near Ukrainian border, and so everybody's thinking what's going on, and will there be a real aggression against Ukraine, for example, and by this Russia is also waging its information operation. And all of these tactics, they can be used separately or could be combined. So the next slide shows us the features of the information operations. Here on the left, in this picture, you see a lot of names of Russian media outlets. Most of them are state-owned. Some are not state-owned, but controlled by Kremlin. So because one of the main feature of the information operations is multiple channels on numerous sources. So the more you say something, the more often you say something, and more often you use different sources, the more people get involved in your narrative. and also massive repetition, it's the same. Then sowing chaos in media space, it means that Kremlin is always putting different versions of what's going on, because when there is chaos in information space, then it's much easier to pursue with your own agenda. And for example, in Salisbury, when Russian military intelligence made this operation against Britain citizens, they at one time they used 40 different explanations of what has happened. And now we see almost the same situation in Czech Republic, when Kremlin is every day trying to find something new, compromise the truth, and make the situation look chaotic, so that people will not trust anything and will not find any media reliable and trustworthy. So here you see that except of media outlets and state-controlled media, Kremlin usually combines cyber operations with disinformation operations. So disinfo campaigns are backed up with cyber operations and vice versa. And in this cyber operation, for Russian state secret services are used, and they control different hacktivist groups who work on their behalf, and who were many times catched, and I mean found guilty, because there were real evidence that these people were doing the illegal operation on some other country's soil. For example, the last one was the solar winds attack in the United States, when several Russian hackers connected to, it says here, GRU, but now it's called not main intelligence directorate, just main directorate of the general staff of the armed forces. But anyway, it's the same structure, and the hackers were accused of this attack. And when Biden administration came to power, he promised that Russia will pay for this. And now we see this situation evolving. And here in the red squares beneath, you can see the names of the hackers groups who are used by these, which are used by these secret services. So I know that you had a lecture by Vlad Kabets, the executive director of iSense, where I am an expert on disinformation, and they made great research on pro-Kremlin disinformation in Belarus. I'm not sure if he showed you these their findings, but I will stop a little bit on them. So iSense made that research and found out 4 main groups of Kremlin disinformation in Belarus that are connected with the different countries. So the first one is connected with Belarus. The second group is about Ukraine. Third one is about Poland and Baltic states, and the fourth is the collective West, a very popular term which is widely used by Kremlin media and Putin himself. On his last speech, he said to the Federal Assembly about the collective West, which he said resembles him of the Sher Khan in the Mowgli movie. All these four groups are different, but they have very much in common, very many common features. I will now switch to the Ukrainian bloc, because this is what I'm mostly researching. But I would like to highlight one more time that these narratives are very much alike. So Kremlin waged these information operations in Ukraine since 2014 and earlier, and all the methods they found were successful. They now use for Belarus and for other countries. So like Ukraine was like a kind of battleground to try these mechanism schemes, and then use these narratives and these methods and techniques on other countries. So the main narratives of Kremlin disinformation in Ukraine are that Ukraine is under external control and like Western puppet, and United States tells Ukrainian government what to do. The second is that Ukraine is under control of fascists or Nazis. And the third large group is that without an alliance with Russia, Ukraine will not prosper, will not do anything, and it's a failed state, and the only way to survive is to cooperate with Russia. The fourth large group of narratives is that Russia has nothing to do with conflict in Donbass, and it's just Ukrainian internal affairs. And now this narrative is especially very much discussed because we know the latest developments on Minsk agreements, and the Zelensky and Putin probably will meet. So this narrative is very much discussed, because Russia says that it's Ukrainian internal affairs and we have nothing to do. And however, of course, you know that there were real evidence of Russian presence, Russian military presence in Donbass. The fifth group of narratives is that Ukraine plans something aggressive against Belarus, and we usually see some information about some groups of people who were planning something against Belarus. And even if this situation, when this so-called coup was discovered, at first the FSB press release said that they have seen some participation of Ukrainian nationalists. They do not say what nationalists, what did they do, but anyway, it was in the first press release. So probably in some time we will see what Kremlin will make up of this story. And the last but not the least is the different conspiracy theories, like Ukraine shut down the Malaysian Boeing and others, about Soros, about Western biolaboratories in Ukraine, and so on. So different conspiracy theories which we see a lot in Ukraine. Now we will speak a little bit about distribution tools. So how this information finds itself in Ukrainian information space. Of course, the main source is TV. And Russia Today and Sputnik, they work on international audience, and in Ukraine, the most known pro-Kremlin media outlets were channels News One, Zik, and 112. But as you probably know, in March, they were banned in Ukraine. So the owner of these media outlets, Ukrainian member of parliament Taras Kozak, he was sanctioned. And that's why the TV channels which he owns were banned from operation. But behind him, so he was this like nominant figure. Behind him, Viktor Medvedchuk, a Ukrainian oligarch and a close man to Putin. He was standing behind him and behind the schemes that allowed Kozak to own this channel. So now they do not work anymore in Ukraine, and last week their YouTube channels that broadcasted these programs were also banned from Ukrainian audience. So from Ukraine now you cannot see any of these channels. We still have some channels and media controlled by Russia, by Kremlin proxies, but not as many as before. So the other distribution tool is international media and different interviews, opinions, sponsored content. You probably know that it works very simple. Russia has somebody to say something in Western media and then quotes this so-called expert, like American expert said that Ukraine is a failed state, and it starts to use this information on all the media outlets. The other mean is social networks and messengers. Here you see some of them. I will tell a little bit more. So you know that in Ukraine, the two most popular social networks, Russian social networks, Odnoklassniki and Vkontakte, were banned back in 2017 when the previous president Petro Poroshenko was in power, and since then you cannot access them from Ukraine, but they are still popular in Belarus. So Kremlin cannot use them in Ukraine, but still uses them in Belarus. Whereas Telegram is getting more and more popular, and it's popular both in Ukraine and in Belarus. And I have made a special research on Telegram, which was published today. And we find out that because of the one language, so they use Russian predominantly, the popular Telegram channels, they use the same narratives and work both for Ukraine and for Belarus. So they can use the same methods and the same narratives and work for both countries. I think it's very, for Kremlin, it's very convenient because you have not to, split your efforts and just multiply them by these social networks. Then Twitter is not so popular in Ukraine, and I know that in Belarus it's also, well, kind of niche social network still. What I mean by using as political parties, activists and politicians is that Russia directly supports and directly finances some political parties and activists in Ukraine, and some of them were sanctioned, for example, by the United States this year. And of course, these people, they are tools in this information war, because they duplicate and replicate and always repeat Kremlin narratives. Different international conferences, not now, not in time of COVID, but before that, it was a very popular mean of distributing the narratives. Cultural and educational funds also now not as popular, not as effective in Ukraine and probably in Belarus as it was before. When I was researching a soft power, it was a big thing. Now it's used lesser. In Ukraine, it's very hard for Russia to do. In Belarus, it's easier. But anyway, now they are shifting more to other means. And then the Russian Orthodox Church, of course, is the large tool of distributing the Russian narratives. And here it's funny screenshot on the left from Russian-sponsored media Zvezda. So it is military media of the military forces, and it's still on Twitter, so they didn't even delete it. It says that in Ukraine, hungry people steal bread from birds. And the hashtags are Ukraine and hunger. And Twitter marks such messages, so it's marked that it's state-owned the Russian media. But anyway, it doesn't stop TV channel Zvezda to post such fake news. Here is a little bit more on Telegram. So it's getting more and more popular, and the thing that is why we should be very careful with Telegram is because the most popular channels in Telegram are mostly anonymous, and they are. And here on the left, you see that the numbers are now much higher. This is the statistics for 2019. The number of followers, as I said, they are not much higher now. But anyway, all of these Telegram channels are anonymous, and they very often repeat Kremlin narratives, and people read them, and even if they do not completely believe this lets this information get into the information space, information so-called ecosystem of Ukraine, and it begins circulating here. And we also had a research in Ukraine how these Telegram channels influence Ukrainian politicians. And the researcher found out that many Ukrainian politicians, top officials, they read these anonymous Telegram channels, and by these, the authors of these channels can make like means of reflexive control on these politicians, because they could put some sensitive information and try to influence their decisions. So now I would like to speak more about what can we do, because probably from what I have already told, it looks like the situation is very difficult, and there is nothing we could do, and lots of different channels that are used. But anyway, there are mechanisms to counter disinformation, and Ukraine uses some of them. And we also try to find ways of how international and how international effort could help us in this, and could help us, I mean, not only Ukraine, but generally other countries. Why it's difficult? It's because also the Kremlin uses the limited number of methods and tools. It's very flexible, and it doesn't have to spend much time on finding right information. So make the fake information, it's always easier than check something. And so flexibility and this readiness to post and to submit fake information is makes it difficult to counteract. So what we could do is we could develop algorithm for monitoring information, and Ukraine does it, and a lot of non-governmental organizations are in this process, and they have started to do this since 2014. Then some state initiatives we also have, not as successful, unfortunately, as they could be. This year, even this month, 2 centers of countering disinformation have been established. One center has been now is part of the National Security Council, and the other center, which will deal with media literacy, is part of the Ministry of Information Policies and Culture. Also, so boosting media literacy is very important. It's now seen as one of the best tools to counter mechanisms, best tools to counter disinformation, because when the society is resilient, it's very hard to influence it. Targeted campaigns to raise awareness of disinformation, it's very closely combined with media literacy. Then coordinated sanctions, sanctions not only by one country, but also if we could somehow find the mechanisms to make to coordinate our efforts, that would be much better. The most important is that the government should understand that media and information are part of the national security, and securing them, by securing them, we secure our just statehood, and that's very important. Speaking about the resilience, resilience is a very popular topic right now in Ukraine, and last year it became part of the new national security program. So it's now in the concept of national security of Ukraine, and it's very good to know that in this concept we have this description of a common government and civil society efforts. And it also says about strengthening the national media market, and about analyzing and exposing disinformation, and supporting alternative expert agenda, which civil society organization as ours are very helpful in. Speaking about exposing disinformation, it's also very important to know that exposing such attempts, exposing disinformation is one of the best ways to counter it, because then the aggressor, the entity who does it, has to reapproach, to find other ways, other means, and by this we are getting more time and could strengthen our resilience. Yes, that's the Ukrainian national security strategy I have mentioned, and the other two, so it consists of 3 pillars, one of which is resilience, and the other 2 are deterrence and interaction. And so both, as you see, 3 of them are very important. And speaking about interaction, it's what now Ukraine is trying to do, is to get as much support as possible from European Union and from NATO countries.